Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Port Phillip City Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners on the lands from which we meet today. We pay our respects to their elders, both past and present, and we acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. So, we're back in hybrid format with councillors and some officers joining from the Town Hall under COVID-safe conditions, while members of the public join virtually via the Webex platform. So, our meeting is being streamed via Council's webcast page and Facebook Live. Streams and recordings of council meetings are copyrighted and cannot be altered, reproduced or republished without the permission of council. Whilst we are operating in this hybrid mode, there's always the risk of technical issues that arise beyond our control. If we experience difficulties, we will adjourn for a short time to resolve the issue, and if we cannot, we will adjourn the meeting completely and let you know of the newest dates and times. I do remind all attendees that anyone participating in tonight's meeting must extend due courtesy and respect to Council and the processes under which it operates, and must take direction from the Chair whenever called on to do so. Speakers must remain respectful, and statements or questions must not be defamatory, offensive or objectionable, aimed at embarrassing a councillor or a member of council staff, or relate to a matter outside the powers of council. Let's get started. So item 1 is apologies. Councillors, I see all of you here, so we do not have any apologies. 2, minutes of previous meetings. So councillors, the minutes of the council meeting held on the 21st of July 2021 have been circulated. Are there any questions regarding these minutes? There being none, can I have a councillor first moved by Councillor Sirikoff and seconded by Councillor Bond. Let's put that motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Does anyone have a conflict of interest in a matter being discussed at tonight's agenda? No? So before we move on to public question time and submissions, I'm going to take the moment to say a farewell to one of our general managers. I can't see you, Lily, you're not in my eye line. So, Lily Rosick, I'd just like to, on behalf of my fellow councillors, celebrate the legacy that you're leaving behind and congratulate you on your new ventures. So here's some history about Lily that you did not know. Lily first joined the City of Port Phillip in 1991 and until 2002 worked as an MCH nurse and MCH coordinator. Lily then returned to COP in April of 2017 in the role of Manager of Safety and Amenity, and then was appointed the General Manager for Place Strategy and Development, which is now Development, Transport and City Amenity. During her time at COP, Lily has made significant contribution to Council, demonstrating excellent and insightful leadership skills in many roles, most recently as the General Manager, as I said, of Development, Transport and City Amenity. And this includes leading the development and delivery of key strategies in the Council plan. A few specific key achievements include her work successfully advocating to the State Government to obtain $2.8 million to deliver a new eco-centre. I'm just turning over the page, sorry. Someone's cut a whole lot from my thing. There was a whole lot. Oh, I've got a shortened version of my speech. Don't worry, bear with me, bear with me. They've cut out the bits. They've cut out the other bit. It also includes working with the State Government to advocate for the Shrine to the Sea and Anzac Station, working on key strategies, and the one that will always be dear to my heart and I will be very grateful for is the work that you did in the Elster Creek catchment area and with Melbourne Water to help further the possible mitigation of flooding for Elwood and surrounds. The clear and enduring success of the many projects that Lily's been involved with is a testament to Lily's hard work and skill. But before I invite you to join with me in thanking Lily and wishing her the best, I wanted to say, Lily, on a personal note, I was reading through all of your accomplishments, which is the shortened version not in front of me, and I realised that your area of focus, importantly, has included dogs, pet owners, planning and parking, which I have to say are the 3 most emotive issues in the spectrum of council matters. And in acting, they say don't work with animals or children, but I reckon in council we might say don't work with pets, parking or planning. I'm sorry. But you have always managed these areas with great aplomb, generosity, patience, and with a great sense of humour. You have paid a huge service to our community over the years, Lily. And I would like, councillors, if you would join me in a round of applause to thank you and wish you best of luck in your new role. They are lucky to have you at Cardinia Shire Council and your role as General Manager for Livable Communities. And I have some flowers for you, Lily Rosick. Where's my mask? I've lost my mask. There it is. Okay, now it's public question time when I get my sheets together, probably. Bear with me. So we will now hear all the public questions and comments on report items from members of the public. All requests to speak were required to be submitted by 4 p.m. this afternoon. So I now call upon Zoe Tovey, who is submitting a question to Council. Zoe, are you online with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Zoe, nice and clearly, actually. So could you please state your name and suburb and then speak away?
Okay, I'm just Zoe Tovey. I'm here with my daughter Tess, who is 6. Okay.
Hi, Tess.
Hi.
We're in St Kilda East.
Yes, please.
And my question relates to the Alma Park playground.
Great. Continue on.
Okay, so we were going to ask, please...
We were going to ask, can you please bring the monkey bars back? I've never seen a kid bump their heads on the monkey bars before. It doesn't cause much injuries. Why should you take them away?
Wow. Did your mum want to add any more to that question before I ask the officer to answer that question?
Yes, I just wanted to ask if Council would consider reinstating the monkey bars at Alma Park Playground. My daughter, who's 6, was very distressed when they were removed. She now cried for a long time and now no longer wants to use the park. They were her favourite piece of play equipment.
Yes.
And she's spoken to another school friend, Vivian, was it, who was also very upset that the monkey bars have gone. We don't think we're unsafe. They were not too high from the ground and had tan bark underneath them, and we never saw anyone hurt themselves or do anything unsafe on them. Kids just swing on them. And we think the Alma Park Playground is a poorer place without its monkey bars.
Yes, and a really bad place too. Because many kids love the monkey bars, and it's very sad to hear that they're gone.
Well, thank you very much for coming and speaking to Council. It's very impressive to hear you participating at such an early age. So I'm going to ask one of our officers, Anthony Trail, to respond. Anthony, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Zoe, for your question. The monkey bars at Alma Park were identified as defective and unsafe to Australian standards via a recent inspection in July. The good news is the equipment has temporarily been removed for refurbishment and reinstatement will be rectified ASAP. This could take up to 6 weeks just with supply change of the equipment needed to make that equipment safe again and available for our community. In some further good news, additional to this work, Council's also funded through the current budget to make some further enhancements to this playground in early 2022 with improved accessible paths, furniture and additional nature-based play elements for our community. Community notification of these works will occur later this calendar year and I'd look to be happy to engage Zoe regarding that further.
Mr Trail, that is really good news. So thank you, Zoe and Tess. I think your wish is going to come true, just not quite yet. So that's great news for all the kids at Alma Park. But thank you for bringing it to our attention. All right, I'm going to call upon Nicholas Creamer, who is speaking to item 10.1 Cobden Street Pocket Park. Nicholas.
Hi,
Nicholas,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. If you could state your name and suburb and then please speak away.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Nicholas Creamer, resident of City of Port Phillip, but I'm calling on behalf or speaking on behalf of the landowner at number 8 Palmerston Crescent, South Melbourne, in the Domain precinct. So firstly, my question or statements in regards to the Cobden Street Pocket Park. Firstly, I'd like to commend Council, specifically Anthony, Dana and Lachlan, on getting this project to the current point in time, where I believe tonight it's up for an update to the councillors. By way of background, as landowner at number 8 Palmerston Crescent, which is currently under construction, a new mixed-use office and residential development, we've been sort of heavily involved in the community discussion around the Domain Precinct more broadly, but specifically this Kings Place or Cobden Street Plaza project. So it is very, it's good to see that things have progressed from the sort of public realm master plan that I think was endorsed in 2019. So along with some of the other landowners in the area, we've sort of been party to these discussions over the past 2 years, and I must say it is good to see that we've sort of reached this point in time where it looks like some or partial funding's been secured by the state government or from the state government, in addition to funding from the council budget. I guess my question is, from what I see in the report, it's impressive. I acknowledge that it's probably only part of what the vision for this precinct was in that public realm master plan. What I'd like to know from the council, and I've sort of voiced this in the past, is as developers we're required to make open space contributions as part of our development contribution under the planning scheme. We'd really like to supercharge this precinct and see our contributions be put towards this project to really make sure that we're sort of achieving the vision that we think this could be, not only for the sort of current residents within this precinct, but for the future inhabitants of the precinct. So my question is, has council I've never sort of had a clear response on this with regards to whether or not open space contributions can be put to specific purposes.
All right. Do we want an officer to respond to that immediately, or should we take that on notice? Chris Carroll?
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies. I'm having real trouble deciphering the speaking tonight so far on the past 2 speakers, so I'll have to take that on notice. I do know it was about open space contributions and can they be dedicated to a specific thing, but I wasn't able to catch most of the rest of the conversation.
Just CEO, we just want to quickly respond. And maybe can I just ask, now that I've turned up the speakers so loudly, can I turn them down a bit, which may help people? Just a little bit. Thank you. Sorry, CEO.
Through you, Mayor. The question for Mr Carroll's benefit was, can public space contributions from a particular development be hypothecated back to a park? In general, I think the answer is, and Mr Carroll, correct me if I'm wrong, those go into a reserve, and then the reserve is allocated into public space projects through the budget process. So there's not a particular hypothecation. But Mr Carroll, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, one of the things that we do consider in how we allocate development contributions is the nexus between what's created the development contributions. So we will consider things like where development is occurring and therefore making the contributions, but there is no specific hypothecation to particular developments and particular open space acquisitions or developments at this stage.
Great, thank you. I call on Phillip Edmonds, speaking to item 10.3, the Pickles Street, Bridge Street and Glover Street, South Melbourne trial of safety improvements. Phillip.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
I can, if you could state your name and suburb and then please speak to the item.
Okay, my name is Phillip Edmonds and I'm from South Melbourne. I wanted to speak in support of the proposal that's being put to Council. The issues around safety of this intersection have been around for a long time and they've been subject to controversy, as I understand, for a long time, including various town halls and other things. No one seems to disagree with the proposition that the intersection itself is very unsafe. It is, of course, the case that no solution is going to be perfect and no solution is going to please everyone, but some solution has to be come to. The proposal in my submission deals in the most cost-effective and practical way with the central issue, which is safety. The objections don't really speak to safety. They mostly, I think, speak to traffic redirection and inconvenience. inconvenience is to some extent addressed by the amendment to the proposal, which is to allow a cut-through in the island towards the end of Bridge Street to allow better access to the one side of the street. In relation to traffic redirection, the objections are based on assumptions of what might happen, speculation as to what might happen. Although there are a fair number of them, relative to how many people have been surveyed, there's not a huge number. And I guess it is a truism that if anyone in the surrounding street is asked, would they like any more traffic, even if it's a small number in their street, they would likely say, if they had the choice, no. But in any event, it's based on assumptions and speculation, and the only real way of determining what might happen in terms of traffic redirection is to conduct the trial. I think my submission would be that it's entirely feasible that in terms of any actual traffic redirection, that would largely be limited to local traffic. The real issue here in terms of volume is through traffic, and I think it's quite feasible that through traffic is going to continue to use direct routes and therefore choose other arterial routes, which would be what should happen and would be the safe thing in this case. But in any event, the trial itself will be what will indicate and give empirical data in relation to that. You can't really determine otherwise. So really, in summary, I think there have been accidents. Fortunately, at this point, as I understand it, no fatalities and no serious long-term impairments for people. But clearly there's the possibility of that. There have been various propositions put over a very long time. And I commend Council, I guess, that this is a trial. It is a practical way of dealing with the matter, and some action has to be taken in one of the worst intersections in the city. So thank you for your time, and I commend the proposal to Council.
Thank you, Phillip, apologies. I now call on Angela Dawson speaking to item 12.1, Palace Foreshore event proposal. Hi, Angela.
Good evening. Hello. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. For the record, my name is Angela Dawson. I have been a trader at the St Kilda Foreshore for 16 years, and the past 18 months has been the most challenging time we've ever known. Our precinct is designed for tourism, and without tourism, St Kilda traders have been brought to their knees. The only hope of coming out of this is to trade to our full capacity in the summer. As I spoke to only 2 weeks ago, activation is the key to bringing life back to St Kilda. Activation needs to include all demographics. One thing alone will not be the golden goose. This, of course, includes concerts, and we are fully supportive of live music. It is and always has been the cornerstone of St Kilda. We do, however, also rely on people being able to travel here to attend such events. And as such, blocking off St Kilda's major car park will have a catastrophic impact on local traders and our visitors. This is not just about event days themselves. It's about the number of days the car park is closed. Most notably, the days it is closed that no events are actually taking place. I think everyone is happy to sacrifice car parks for one-off events, but for months on end is just not tenable. I'd like to address the cumulative effect of having multiple events on the same day. I would like to ask the Council to look at the dates proposed by Live Nation and check them against the current major event calendar. It appears their events often occur on the same day or same weekend as other major events, such as those planned for Catani Gardens. This will put even more pressure on the already strained parking situation in St Kilda. It also doesn't particularly help traders when it's a feast or famine type event program. With restrictions here to stay, it would be preferable to space these events out so the city can get the full benefit of all planned events. In the interest of activation, I'd like to finish by confirming that we support the Live Nation proposal, subject to the already agreed criteria being satisfactorily met, including the provisions of public access to 160 car parks on all event and non-event days and other agreed criteria by Live Nation. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Angela. I call upon Jay Rayner, speaking to the same item 12.1, the Palace Foreshore event proposal. Hi, Jay.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Everyone can hear me?
Yeah, and Jay, could you just state your name and suburb, and then you've got 3 minutes to speak, and I may ask a question or two at the end of it while we've got you.
No problems. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Councillors. Thank you for your time. My name's Jay Rayner. I work in St Kilda but live in Clifton Hill. I'm the co-producer of April Sun, which we saw in April, and the Palace Foreshore proposal that's sitting before you. Just a quick thanks to the council officers for the huge amount of work and the input and the considerations of Ackland Street Traders, Fitzroy Street Traders and the Foreshore Traders Association. We've had a pretty solid dialogue over weeks and there's been a lot of work that has got this proposal up to the stage it's at. I want to reiterate, and Nick, my colleague from Live Nation, will speak about some of the broader problems that the arts and entertainment have faced, but we're all pretty across those issues as a society, I think. I just want to reiterate the dire straits of the arts and entertainment industry. While every sector of our economy has been affected by the pandemic, arts and entertainment, as we all know, we were the first to close, and we're going to be the last to reopen. We were really lucky to get those shows up between 2 lockdowns in April, for April Sun in April, and this has seen tens of thousands of Victorians out of work who are now seeking new employment or sadly have moved to other sectors. I'll try and get through this. I've got a lot to say. Councillor, I know I've already shared this information with you either by phone or email, but I want to put on the public record to reflect the economic and job creation benefits of the proposal that we're talking about. These numbers are real numbers. They're real dollars, and real people get paid for their real hard work. The proposal aims to inject $1.26 million directly into artists and artist support teams. By artist support teams, we mean associated musicians, artist technical and touring teams, their management, agent, bookers and labels. Many people aren't aware of the vast organisations that work behind the success of every artist that we put and see on stages. There's another $240,000 that we've put in our budget for event and management professionals. It's people like me and people like Nick, who you'll hear from. These are the people that design, operate, administer and safely manage our event spaces, our stage managers, production managers, operation managers. As you know, many of these people haven't worked in any form or any form of job security since March 2020. There's another $170,000 to $180,000 of casual event and hospitality workers. This is a big sector. There's $531,000, $500,000 to event contractors. These are stage builders, cleaners, security staff, production suppliers, fencing, toilet suppliers, traffic managers. The list goes on and on. This group's important. This group is a majority small to medium business enterprises, and they employ thousands of Victorians and are really on the edge at the moment. The ones I talk to, many are facing closure, imminent closure. In addition, as you know, the project provides 4 streams of community outreach. I won't go too deeply into those, but there's a 6-month paid internship for 2 people, which we want to aim at City of Port Phillip residents, young people who need an opportunity and a leg up. And there's a fairly highly developed developmental arts program in collaboration with the Palais Theatre. I guess I just want to say I witnessed the spirited debate last week around the Ferris wheel proposal at South Beach Reserve. And councillors, I know despite the failure of that proposal, I would say from witnessing there's a unanimous agreement that with 78% of visitation down to the city, there is the requirement for some significant activation and flag waving. The council initiative put live music and entertainment at the heart of any post-pandemic rebuild is clearly demonstrated by the adoption and endorsement of the City of Port Phillip's Live Music Action Plan, and we commend that plan. It's an amazing initiative. The plan obviously recognises the importance of live music in St Kilda's history and recognises nothing says we're back in business and we're back in town like the lights, colour and movement of a live music event. And obviously the associated publicity campaign that we use to promote them. Music reaches far and wide.
Jay, I'm just going to have to ask you to wrap up because you're 3 minutes. Yeah, if you could, and then we might ask a question.
Sure. Look, all I want to say is all those benefits above, they come at you can't put these things on without a public cost, and we recognise that. the benefits I've said above, many of them are intangible cultural benefits, some of them are tangible economic benefits. And I'd say that the cost is pretty easy to identify. It's a number of car parks over a number of days.
Thank you.
I've spoken to the Foreshore. You going to cut me off? Okay.
I am going to cut you off. Sorry, Jay. Could I just, while we actually have you here, could I ask a question just around sustainable transport, given that car parking is an issue? Is it possible to do things like innovative things like as part of the ticketing and website that it's not, encouraging people to catch public transport or cabs or things like that, so that it really is like, because there will be limited car parking, that it's that kind of encouragement? Is that something that you factored in or could consider?
It's something that we do factor in and something we have factored in. We have at least 3 points of contact, maybe, and potentially more with every ticket holder. I've outlined to many of the traders and trader associations how we can actually use them to benefit the traders. But to answer your question, we go out with significant public transport plans, and it actually advise people to not bring their car and park. Many of them are coming down to watch concerts and potentially drinking. We don't want them driving their cars. But on our exit surveys, we found that 87% of our people that came to the April Sun project, which is very similar to this proposal, came via rideshare vehicle, taxi, public transport, cycling or walking. I would say there was a high percentage of walking.
Yeah, great, thank you. Are there any other councillors? Are there any direct questions you wanted to ask of Jay just before we move on to the next speaker? Doesn't seem so. Jay, thank you very much for your time.
No problems. Any questions? I'm here. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. I now call on Mary Stewart speaking to item 12.1, the Palace Foreshore event proposal. Hi, Mary.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. I've had to dial in on my mobile as I couldn't get my laptop to work. But that aside, my name is Mary Stewart. I live and work in St Kilda. I represent Luna Park, Melbourne. I'm part of the Foreshore Traders Group and St Kilda Tourism and Events. In terms of the proposal that is before the Council, when we first heard of this maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, I was quite surprised that we were asked to put a position in writing by Friday of last week. And Luna Park had not had any contact from anyone on the Council or anyone from Live Nation regarding this proposal and the closure of the car park for what was going to be 70 days in 2022 and very limited occupancy over critically important trading days for Luna Park in November and December next year and also in February and March next year. I understand that there have been amended dates provided to council officers, and I would like to say that we support live music and we support this event. What we object to is the siting of the event, the lack of consultation, and the impact, the very negative, detrimental impact that the proposal could have on Luna Park and other foreshore businesses. Whilst we support a return of live music to our city, it should not be at other people's cost. And it's not good enough to be told about this a week before a decision comes to Council when there have been discussions going on with Council for 6 months. Notwithstanding that, the foreshore traders have had discussions with Live Nation, very belatedly discussions with Live Nation from Luna Park's point of view. And I understand that there is agreement from Live Nation to a number of things. And we would, whilst we think the event should be staged elsewhere, we would reluctantly support the event on the basis that the council approves it provisionally, approves the change dates, which I don't think have been publicly circulated, and the reduced occupancy period for the Triangle, subject to a number of caveats, and that is that the Palace Foreshore Live Nation people guarantee access to 160 car parks on all event and non-event days, with the siting of these to be agreed, and including agreement with the foreshore traders, that there be provisions made for coach staging and parking for up to 35 buses for particular days where there are large events being held at Luna Park, and that Live Nation provide for valet parking for customers attending the Stoke House and Donovan's as per their proposal, but obviously at their cost, and that there be provision for appropriate pedestrian traffic flow to the foreshore from the Triangle site. If the council is minded to approve the revised dates and timing, with those caveats, then we would reluctantly withdraw our opposition. But let me make it very clear, I know exactly how hard it is to have your business shut. We have been shut, and there are 200 jobs at Luna Park that are there by dint of will rather than anything else. We are significantly in debt, and the lack of what is a public amenity in terms of the car park, which we rely upon heavily in terms of our business, will have an impact on us. Make no mistake, it will have an impact. So I commend to the council the position that we have put, that the council provide provisional approval to the change dates, and that the items listed in terms of parking and access for buses and things be part of any approval process.
Thank you, Mary. I now call upon Frank Van Handel, also speaking to the Palace Foreshore event, which is item 12.1. Frank.
Hi everyone, and I trust you can hear me.
Yes, we can. If you could state your name and suburb, and then please, you've got 2 minutes.
Yes, Frank Van Handel, Stoke House Restaurants in Killer. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Councillors. For the record, I'd just like to say that I'm in total support of all artists, and for the record, I support Live Nation bringing live music to St Kilda. For the record, I believe music festivals belong in a park with grass, trees, open blue skies. The car park is the unsexiest and cold, hard, desolate place to have a music festival. I believe Live Nation's first choice is that they would like to have their concerts in a park. South Beach Reserve, Fitzroy Street, Lakeside Drive, Corner, Catani Gardens. Any one of these sites benefits everybody. It makes the best commercial sense for council. The council collect rent from the renting out the parks or gardens, plus they collect the revenue from the car park, which we all desperately need for people that are coming to these events. The car park was closed for 31 days from April, for April Sun, with only 7 concerts. So for the other 23 days, St Kilda was like a ghost town, which had a devastating effect on the surrounding businesses. Luna Park, Donovan, Stoke House, Sea Bars, resulting in us slashing staff hours. Collectively, we employ over 1,000 people during the summer months. And as we know, the summer months in St Kilda, it's like the snow season. We have a very, very small opportunity to drive revenue. Since March 2020, we've been closed for 258 days. For 28 days, we were restricted to only have 40 patrons, which is 4.2% capacity. For 28 days, we were only allowed to have 100 patrons, so that was 9.4% of our capacity. And for a further 225 days, we have been restrained to a 50% capacity. So why does council not move festivals where they belong, in parklands? So with huge reservation and great reluctance, I also asked council to provide provisional approval to the change dates and reduced occupancy of the triangle. All the caveats that mentioned by Mary just now, but also that the entrance to Jackal, there should be an entrance and an exit to the pedestrian crossing on Jackal Boulevard, so that we're not looking at toilets and back of house garbage areas and so forth, which Live Nation put on the Jackal Boulevard side of their event last year.
If you could start to wrap
thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Frank.
Okay.
I call upon David Blakely, speaking to item 12.1, Palace Foreshore event proposal. David, are you with us?
I am. David Blakely, St Kilda. Tonight I speak on behalf of the Pickles Business Association and also on behalf of Janet Rosenberg from Atkins Street, who's unable to attend. The major activations on St Kilda sites have been the Palais, traditionally the National and the Alex, and lesser degree theatre works. Whenever there's an event at one of these locations, we see businesses busy with restaurants, even retail busy. There's a vibe in St Kilda. We support the activation of the Triangle Car Park. The prospect of being 40,000 music fans to St Kilda, I think, will have great benefits and has a proven record of benefiting our businesses, our traders. Live Nation has been working with us to maximise these benefits, encouraging people to eat before they go to the shows, drink it in a responsible manner at local venues, trying to utilise local businesses to do the online catering, etc., the on-site catering. But we do realise there are issues with the location, and I hope we can minimise the impact the Live Nation event has upon local amenity parking by perhaps the council consider parking the buses at the Riva Bar, down the Riva car park, which is underutilised, and perhaps can we see the temporary suspending of the bike lanes on and return to parking on the lower Esplanade in a safe manner, perhaps with a lower speed limit, etc. But most importantly, I think, as we all know, we have heard the music industry, the arts, are suffering shockingly, as are traders with lockdowns also on our streets. And this activation, I think, sits very well with the St Kilda Music Plan. It benefits both the music business, as I said, music business not just musicians, there's also roadies, it's also lighting technicians, sound people, but also, most importantly, our traders. And it's helping bring some vibrancy back to our suburb when we have a 78% reduction in tourism, and it's something for the future. Hopefully the plan, we can make a means and the plan can come off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. I call on Nick Tischler, speaking to the same item 12.1. Hi, Nick.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, and all. Hope you can hear me. Nick Tischler here. I live in Alphington and I work in St Kilda when we can. I'm the Vice President of Production Logistics with Live Nation, and I'm here tonight in support of my colleague Jay Rayner and the proposal we've put before Council to activate the Palace Foreshore precinct with live music. As context to this, I'd like to touch on the very parlous state of the industry, and particularly those most affected, the workers, many of whom reside in your council precinct. I would like to refer to the latest I Lost My Gig survey, which was released this week. 2,000 industry professionals were canvassed, and of those, 67% of the respondents reported being ineligible for government disaster payments. 99% of people reported having no income protection, and most concerningly, 60% of respondents are looking for alternative employment. This represents quite a terrifying skills exodus from a very specialised industry. Quite simply, our business and our industry can't operate as a takeaway business. Live Nation as a company exists to take risks. It's the nature of the promoting business. We, as a business, have not gone to government to ask for handouts, just the ability to operate as sports has done, but without their commercial broadcast buffer. The risk profile on shows is already great, and this has become even more exacerbated in the time of COVID, which cannot be insured against. The risk on the shows at the Foreshore runs to millions of dollars. That's millions of dollars which is going to the aforementioned people, businesses and artists who rely on us to commit to that risk. We're committed to doing this for the greater benefits that emerge to the City of Port Phillip, your community, the wider industry and Melbourne society by supporting the creation of art, most particularly in a car park, as we hope the Council are supportive of this too. And I think this is reflected well in the master plan for the return of live music to the Council precinct. We unequivocally do not wish to see this series be cancelled or postponed, as with some other 83,000 gigs since July the 1st of 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. I call upon Travis Atkins. Travis, also speaking to 12.1 Palace Foreshore event proposal.
Thank you, Travis Atkins, St Kilda. Madam Mayor, councillors are representing St Kilda Tourism Events, St Kilda Sea Bars, and we've heard eloquently from a range of stakeholders in support of and objecting to this proposal. I think as a community we've got the power here to develop a medium point to resolve the issues and make the event a great benefit to the community. And I think that there's an ability for the event to work and deliver economic impact and deliver car parking. So I'm urging the provisional approval of the change dates to allow for car parking to service local business. So a change in the current structure of the recommendation. Live Nation has agreed to the provision of 160 car parks in the vicinity of the event that will allow traders to park, patrons to park near the businesses. This is good news as public transport has been greatly affected by the pandemic and is less likely to be embraced in the short term by customers. If this provision is not possible, the negative impact of the car parking loss will far outweigh the benefit of the event in my view. Businesses are in no shape to weather further negative impacts. We do support arts, we do support live music, and we want to see them flourish and recover. We do, of course, want to see this and other activations take place in St Kilda and drive a family audience and mixed demographic use of the amenity. It's estimated that, as we said, 78% of visitation has been lost, but by working together as a community, we can deliver events that are beneficial to residents, traders and visitors, and it's more crucial than ever. So please provide provisional approval for the event, noting the agreed criteria, which has been circulated, so we have time to work proactively with Live Nation and with Council to deliver a win-win solution for everyone. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Travis. So we have received some further submissions to be read out on behalf of members of the public or questions. So I'll call the name out of each member of the public and refer to the Head of Governance, Kirsty, to read a summary of the submissions. So the first question tonight comes from Adrian Jackson.
Through you, Mayor, and the question reads, while located within Port Phillip, the Pride Centre has a much broader customer base across Melbourne and Victoria, given the turnout at the annual Pride March. What steps are in place to ensure that ratepayers will not be requested to further fund the Pride Centre regularly if they get into financial difficulties?
Tony Keenan.
Through you, Mayor. Pride Centre is a public company limited by guarantee and a charity registered with the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission with a skill-based board The most recent search on the ACNC website indicates a very healthy financial position. Having said that, Council doesn't provide any operational funding to the Pride Centre. It's provided, obviously, the grant to enable the centre to be built. There's no reason to indicate that Council will be called on to provide funds to the Pride Centre for its operation. My understanding is it has a sound business model where its income will be derived from rent and an established fundraising program. Having said that, Mr Jackson's question is what measures could we put in place to stop someone requesting assistance from Council. I don't think we can put any measures in place to stop any organisation requesting assistance.
Thank you, Tony. I've got a second question from Adrian Jackson.
Through you, Mayor, the question reads, Council has allocated ratepayer funds in the form of grants to various organisations annually. During the last year, COVID was upon us and many intended activities that grant money was to be spent on may not have happened. Where has this surplus money gone, and is Council taking steps to recover it? The problem may be continuing this financial year and beyond. Council should tell applicants, if they don't already, that surplus funds must be returned to Council at the end of each financial year. Organisations that receive grants must provide a post-activity report to Council to show how any Council money was spent.
I think we've got some good news for you. Katrina Tujong, are you online?
Yes, I am. Through you, Mayor. Council does have a robust process in place to ensure that grants provided to community groups and organisations are fully expended in delivering the projects and programs for which the funding is allocated. All grant recipients are required to submit an acquittal report demonstrating that the project has been delivered in line with the funding agreement, and also they provide data on aspects such as the number and the profile of community members that have participated in programs, and also the number of volunteer hours contributed. This enables us to measure community benefit delivered. Longer-term grant programs such as the annual community grants also require a mid-year project status report to be submitted so that progress can be tracked by Council and support officers offered to deliver to assist delivery if required. On occasions, grant applications do request a variation to their proposal, which Council will then assess. This may alter the delivery approach of a grant, but whilst it would still meet the overall objective. The current 2021 grants process sought applications in March and April of 2020, just at the start of the COVID pandemic. And given the potential constraints on delivery of programs, the grant application process was reopened to enable adjustments to be made to respond to the COVID context. At this point, we did have one application that was withdrawn, and quite a number of others were adapted for online delivery. The midpoint project status reports have just been submitted for this round, and acquittals are due in December. At this stage, there are no indications of projects that will not be delivered. There have been past occasions when projects have not been able to be delivered under grant funding, and that's been returned to Council. And this did occur during COVID with a small number of our local Love Your Place grants that were not able to be delivered to deliver the activation programs intended due to COVID lockdown. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. One more question from Adrian Jackson.
Through you, Mayor, the question reads, what steps are being taken to wind up arts and other ratepayer-funded organisations within Port Phillip that cannot perform their intended function due to COVID-19?
Are you doing the other part as well? Oh, sorry.
Apologies, there's another part over the page. And the second part of the question is, will the St Kilda Sunday Market be a spreader concern given the visitor numbers it attracts? And I note that Mr Jackson also asked questions pertaining to COVID-19 and safety of vaccinations, and these questions are not within the powers of Council.
Kylie Bennett.
Through you, Mayor, Council is unaware of any arts organisations unable to perform their intended function due to COVID-19. Many of our creative organisations have pivoted their operations substantially and have been able to continue exhibiting or performing in some capacity, and we hope that this will increase further over time. With respect to the Esplanade market, it is operating under a strict COVID-safe event plan to provide an environment that is safe for both our traders and the community.
We have a question from Jen Edge. Is it a question or comment for 12.1, which is the Palace Foreshore proposal?
Through you, Mayor, and Ms Edge's question reads, can Council explain why I have been advised by Live Nation on 30 July that an agreement has been made with Council without public consultation to permanently close the lower Esplanade off Cavill Street to public access as at end March 2022, creating a forecourt as an anti-terrorist vehicle mechanism?
Do we want to respond now or take that on notice? Anthony Trail, thank you. Are you there, Anthony?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thanks for your question, Jen. I think the reference is in relation to our project, which is the creation of the forecourt and raised wombat crossing between Luna Park, based around hostile vehicle management measures. We've got a web page and plenty of stories on our website. I'm happy to engage Jen around that, and we are about to undertake some further community engagement about the timing of those works in the coming months.
Thank you. And then we've got a statement from Gail and Kevin Donovan in regards to 12.1, the Palace Foreshore event proposal.
Through you, Mayor, and the submission reads, as per our objection letter dated 27 July, we would like to reiterate the below. As revenue is of utmost importance to Council, consider maintaining the summer revenue for the car parking from the Triangle site and choose an alternate site, for example the corner of Fitzroy Street and Lakeside Drive, while receiving significant revenue from Live Nation. This would also revitalise another area of St Kilda that isn't already overburdened by visitors at this time of year. With our experience of 25 years of watching the pivotal intersection of Cavill and Jacob Boulevard and the main pedestrian crossing access to the foreshore, the closure of the car park will guarantee traffic chaos. The traffic will come to a standstill for hours. It is extremely worrying that Live Nation requests you approve their plans without listing secure dates. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, councillors, we're moving on to item 5, which is councillor question time. Councillors, do you have any questions for officers? No? Then we will move on to the sealing schedule, which unfortunately we have no items for sealing on tonight's agenda. So 7 is petitions and joint letters. Councillors, we have no new petitions or joint letters on tonight's agenda. However, I do note that we have item 10.3, which is the Pickle Street, Bridge Street and Glover Street, South Melbourne trial of safety improvements, in a report, and that's responding to 3 petitions that were received by Council at earlier meetings. So let's move to 8 to 13 on the agenda, which is presentation of reports. Starting with 9.1, which is the Community Grants Assessment Panel Reference Committee, the appointment 2021 to 2023. Councillors, are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report? I have one, if I may. It's really bad. We couldn't quite remember who decided to be from councillors on that committee, and I was wondering, are you able to clarify that for us? I thought I was on it, but perhaps I am not. Is that information at hand? Sorry, a late call.
Through you, Mayor, I think Katrina or Emma, who are online, might be able to assist with that.
If not, it's not a big deal. Katrina, do you happen to know who the 2 councillors that were nominated for this committee are?
Through you, Mayor, Councillor Bond is one of them, and I'm afraid I cannot recall the other.
That's our problem too. That's all right. We'll take that on notice for all of us. Thank you. Councillors, do we have any other questions in relation to this report? If not, councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? Councillor Baxter to move. Was that a hand up? Councillor Bond to second. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bond? Just check we've got the correct people up there. Yes. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I will briefly, noting that two of the members that are being appointed tonight, Julia and Jamie, have worked on it before, and I had the pleasure of working with them. And I look forward to Anne and James joining us. We met at the Pride Centre opening. It's a really worthwhile panel, and although a lot of work, it has valuable outcomes for our community. So thank you to the community members who have stepped up in this occasion. Tim, would you like to close? All right, councillors, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Moving on to 10.1, which is the Cobden Street Pocket Park. Councillors, are there any questions for the officers in regards to this report? There being none, we have an officer's recommendation. Could I have a councillor to move or this or something other, different? Councillor Consolo to move, Councillor Copsey to second. Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. I drove past this area the other day and it's a bit of a concrete jungle. There's extra space that we could narrow for underutilised street surface. And with so much activity in the area with buildings, it's going to have a good result to turn this into some open space. So I do lament the loss of some more car parks in the area, but I do look forward to the community engagement to understand a bit more about how people feel about this proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Copsey. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Consolo, would you like to close? All right, let's put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. 10.2, which is the draft DAMP for community consultation. Councillors, do we have any questions in regards to this? Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. I have a question about how, if people want to have some questions to council or comments on dogs on our beaches, how would they engage in this process?
Lisa Davis.
Sorry, let me clarify. Dogs maybe also not on the beaches.
Both ways. Lisa? Or Dirk? Lily?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the community will have an opportunity to provide feedback on the draft DAMP plan once it's endorsed by council, and any feedback provided in regards to dogs on beaches will be considered and presented to councillors at a briefing and a council for decision.
Can I just clarify though, Lily, is that online? Everything's online for the consultation on this? So it'll be through our Have Your Say?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the consultation will be impacted by the directions, state government directions in relation to the COVID restrictions. Primarily, it will involve the council's media channels such as Have Your Say, and we'll also be mailing out to interested groups who have registered with council.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? Councillor Martin to move. Councillor Copsey to second. Councillor Martin.
Firstly, can I thank council officers for a very, very detailed draft animal management plan, and I know that many local residents have a chance to have some input in the initial planning for this. I've got some particular things that I'm really pleased to see in it. I'm glad to see that we're proposing more dog parks. I'm delighted to see that we're opposing a cat curfew, a proposed cat curfew from 9 p.m. till 6 a.m. I'm delighted to see that we're trying to educate our dog owners and their dogs through a Dogs in the Park training program. I'm particularly pleased as a local football umpire that dogs are going to be on leashes within 20 metres of sporting events, so I no longer have to stop and carry them off the field. I'm delighted to see that there are going to be QR codes around our parks so that people can see exactly what the status of those parks are in relation to their dogs. And I think we're going to get lots and lots of feedback from our local residents. Hopefully most of those comments are positive. I think it's a great plan, and I look forward to receiving the feedback that comes from the consultation process.
Councillor Copsey. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. We've seen a big growth in the amount of dogs in the area and cats, so this is important to modernise. We've also seen improvement where we are getting less complaints about barking because more people are at home and things like that. And it's interesting to see how much we have advanced in, I believe, the 4 years where QR codes will be now embraced so heavily and modern technology can assist in this. So it's good to see this, and it's well laid out that you can see what's kept and what's new for people to read through it easily. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I will briefly, again, I acknowledge that many of our pet owners do the right thing, but there are some that do not, so it would be really good to find ways and educate the community at large so we can have well-behaved animals across the board, because we love having the animals in our municipality, but it is really necessary to make sure that they are behaved so that everyone is safe, whether they have a pet or don't like dogs or whatever it may be. But we are interested to hear your feedback. Councillor Consolo, would you like to close? Oh no, Councillor Martin, sorry. Councillor Martin. All right, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 10.3 is the Pickle Street, Bridge Street and Glover Street, South Melbourne Trial of Safety Improvements. Are there any questions of this report for officers? Anyone, any questions? If not, councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? Councillor Martin and Councillor Pearl, are you seconding?
No, I think I had my hand up first, but that's okay.
Sorry? I can't hear, I'm deaf. Oh, you've got an alternative recommendation. Okay, Councillor Martin, if we can get that on the screen. Are you able to read out the different part once we get it up, please?
So, Madam Mayor, as you can see, we're removing 3.2 and we're going to replace it with a new 3.2. And the new 3.2 is that Council commissions an independent road safety audit that considers the causes of crashes at the intersection, including the impact of driver distraction, and recommends measures to reduce crashes at the intersection. And then we go to a new 3.3, request that officers report to Council on the outcome of the independent audit, including recommending measures to reduce crashes at the intersection.
Do we have a seconder for this alternate? Councillor Sirikoff. Councillor Martin.
Mayor, firstly, I'd like to thank the Council officers for bringing to our attention that this is one of the most dangerous intersections in the city of Port Phillip, and as someone who's been travelling through it for 20 years, I can attest to my heart is in my mouth often when I go through it. And Council officers have identified that there have been 6 major crashes there in recent years, 4 of them with people turning right into Bridge Street as they're heading in a southwesterly direction down Pickle Street. And the initial officer's recommendation, if we're going to prevent people having crashes turning right out of Pickle Street, if that's caused by inattention of drivers in the process of turning right and not seeing oncoming traffic, it makes sense with the current officer's recommendation that we install a median strip. However, my belief is that we need to look a little more carefully into what the reasons are behind these collisions, and my belief through many, many years of observations and heart-and-mouth experiences is that any driver inattention is caused by distractions caused by vehicles trying to proceed across the intersection from Bridge across to Glover or vice versa, or by vehicles turning right out of Bridge into Pickles, or by vehicles turning right out of Glover into Pickles. And what I'd like is for us to investigate a little further to see if the cause is simply driver inattention, in which case perhaps the median strip proposal would be the correct one, or if I believe is more likely, it's the impact of distractions of drivers coming out of Bridge Street and Glover Street that are causing this. So I'm hoping that when we look at the reasons for those crashes, I'd be confident but not certain that it may well be that if we stop people travelling directly across the intersection from Bridge to Glover and vice versa, and turning right out of Bridge and Glover, that will have a significant impact on improved driver attention and significantly reduce the likelihood of crashes. If that's the case, that's also going to fit in with the many, many requests that I've had from ratepayers who live in that area who are concerned that the installation of a median strip will greatly decrease their access to their own homes. Now, vehicle safety, driver safety is far more important than access to homes. I accept that, but I believe that we may well be able to address both of those if the investigation comes up with the finding that I've suggested it may well. Hence, I'm commending, rather than go ahead with the existing officer's recommendation, we do an additional recommendation and then we'll come back to Council in a few weeks' time with possibly the original recommendation or possibly a new alt-rec based on the findings of that investigation.
Councillor Sirikov.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would also like to thank the officers for the report that's been presented to us, and I would also like to thank all the residents who took part in the petitions that were presented to Council. I have to say that I'm not in favour of heavy-handed approaches at intersections and prefer to see a much smoother or gentler approach, a stage-by-stage approach to looking at other ways of managing intersections when they impact the neighbourhood. As noted in the key issues of this item, there was an initial petition of 77 signatures received by Council raising safety concerns about this intersection. I would say that raising safety concerns should not necessarily mean a closure of the median on Pickle Street, but rather that Council should be considering initially a more moderate or common sense approach as put forward by another petition of 158 signatures. There was also another petition of 45 signatures who did not support the Council proposal because of the changing traffic flow onto nearby streets. On top of this, there were 51 individual responses, 30 of 35 residents who opposed the trial altogether. This basically comes down to 77 residents who raised a safety concern, while 158 residents responded with a proposed modification to the trial, and 80 residents, all up, who opposed the trial. In my opinion, these numbers indicate that the community is largely against the proposed council trial because of the consequential downstream impact of redirecting traffic into neighbouring streets and also restricted access to their homes. So, taking into account the many concerns of the residents and the many residents who responded to this, I do support the alt-rec, whereby further investigations and recommendations be delivered by an independent road safety auditor to ensure we are providing on our roads safety, access and amenity for all the residents.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. Would you want to go first, Councillor Copsey?
Thank you, Mayor. I did want to ask a question around, Councillor Martin mentioned a few weeks of getting this report back, but I was wondering if officers could clarify how long this process might take and whether it's going to delay the overall time frame of implementing a safety response at this intersection, which the report currently has is occurring in November 2021.
Brian T.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The independent audit report, we will need to go to market. It will take approximately 3 months in total.
Okay. Follow-up question?
Which I'm guessing means that the November 2021 intervention for a safety response in this intersection would be difficult to meet if we proceed with the audit.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
Could I also ask a question, Brian T? Do we have a ballpark of how much an independent report like this might be? Just a vague ballpark figure, please?
Based on current recent experience, we expect around $5,000.
there any more clarifying questions? All right, would anyone else like, thank you, Brian, would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I don't see the purpose of why we need to pay for an independent report to tell us what we already know. And councillors, I would ask you to vote against this, and under Section 30 I'll foreshadow if this is defeated I'll be more than happy to put up the officer's recommendations. To a couple of points, access to homes has already been well addressed by officers, and the adjustment to the original plan has been very articulately made in terms of the turning circle, which is a good addition to the original plan that was put forward. Residents will always be unhappy about changes in traffic moves. We've seen that in every one we've done, most recently the Crawford Road incident. What I've found in my 5 years' experience of sitting here is invariably we trial things. This is a trial. It's a practical trial based on evidence on an intersection which is fairly notorious. There's lots of residents on both sides of the street and both sides of the equation that have differing opinions on safety, differing opinions on what should be done, and obviously different opinions on the impact it has on their daily commutes and residential property values and basic amenity. But what we do know is you have to boil it down to the facts. And the facts are, we know this is a dangerous intersection. If you've ever crossed it, you know it's a dangerous intersection. We have to do something about it by commissioning an independent report to tell us what we already know, that it's a dangerous intersection, and we understand where the danger points of this intersection sit, delays a decision which costs more money, costs more time, and probably won't deliver any better outcome for anybody. So the thing about being elected to the council is you have to make some hard decisions sometimes, and they have to be put around the prism of safety, not necessarily listening to your constituents or the people around you that face loss of amenity, etc. When safety sits on a street such as this, it's probably one of the most analysed streets in the city. I'd be interested to know how many traffic reports we've done on Pickle Street in the past 5 years. I can recall at least 2 that had daily street counts, etc. And we've done a lot of work on Pickle Street. The former Gateway Ward councillors did a lot of work on Pickle Street to improve safety, but a lot more needs to be done. We reduced the traffic limit in 2 areas, obviously when the school zone was put in, and before that across the whole length of Pickle Street. And it's really encouraging to see that the average speed on Pickle Street has decreased, but there's still a significant amount of work to be done, and this intersection is dangerous and it needs to be fixed. We don't need another independent report to tell us what our officers have already told us. And what the original petitioners of this intersection put forward. There will be winners and losers out of this, but overall our job as councillors is to ensure that the users of our municipality and the residents of our municipality are safe. And this 12-month trial will allow any type of, the best type of study possible to take place in terms of how can we make this intersection as safe as possible. So councillors, I would strongly urge you to vote against the motion that Councillor Martin and Councillor Sirikoff have put forth this evening. And again, I'm more than happy to foreshadow under Section 30 to fix this dangerous intersection should this motion fail.
Councillor Councillor.
Thank you. I've driven this intersection many times as well, especially in the last couple of days considering this decision. It doesn't seem as dangerous to me, especially in the movements that are quite popular to make, which would be coming from Pickles and turning right into Bridge or coming out. I don't necessarily go the ways that we're trying to block, or certain ways are not that bad, and it's gotten better since there's less traffic on the road. I'd like to read a first-hand account for someone who lives right there, and she said that closing the median is an easy, cheap fix, but I firmly believe this will only push the traffic into smaller surrounding streets. It is not simply going to disappear and will not funnel through to the major roads as they are already the most congested. I do not perform a U-turn and will not do so in the spots suggested in the original report, as it is completely unsafe to do so, and I will not risk the lives of my 3 children who are usually in the car with me. I almost exclusively use the right-hand turn into Bridge from Pickle Street, and have not once in the 8 years I have lived there even come close to an accident. There are similar right turns all the way up and down Pickle Street. The suggestion that this is unsafe at Bridge Street is manipulating the accident data, which I have very carefully reviewed and which the transport team have, in my opinion, misrepresented. The last point I'll make is that the pandemic has changed how busy this intersection is. There is no longer the heavy congestion at the peak times in the morning and afternoon that there have been in previous years. So I think that that's something to be considered, that the time of the original petition was tabled at a meeting in March 2020, and we all know what happened after that. So the traffic conditions have changed a lot, and we don't know really what's going to happen with, will we go back to having peak congestion with more people preferring to work remotely? So I think it's important for us to address this look at it going from, what if we did block some of these other movements that might impact the perception of safety and also result in less accidents? So thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. Oh my God. Yeah, look, I'll speak against this motion. I fully defer to the councillors and people who live in that area about how well they know the street, and I understand that they may feel that certain things are safe, or that there may be other things to look at. I guess the problem I have with this motion is the idea of that if we don't like the advice that's given to us by our officers, that we go and get an independent, we get a second opinion. Our officers are our public service. They are paid to give us the best advice. Now, we can disagree with that advice. I've voted against officer recommendations in the past. We can even state that we think that the advice is poorly done. It's possible. At times, I have felt that advice given to me is undercooked. But I genuinely think, having looked at this report, that really every angle has been looked at here. And I find that this very similar to another situation in my ward, where just every single different option was looked at. The criticism was, we haven't considered this, you haven't considered that, and often the case was that it actually had been considered, but there were really good reasons why you couldn't do it. So I think in this case, the officers have given us the advice. So rather than go and get another report, I would say that either we accept the advice or we disagree with it, and that's fine. But I don't see any need to get a second opinion, because I don't see any element of this report as being undercooked personally.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? All right, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. As usual, I agree with almost everything that Councillor Pearl has said. It's a dangerous intersection. We need to address things as soon as we can. I also believe we need to get it right. And the one thing that I'd take issue with Councillor Pearl is that he says that we know what the danger issues are there. And I believe that unless we investigate further, we don't know what the issues are. We know where the crashes occur, but we don't know why they're occurring. And we don't know what the best traffic treatment is to prevent that. So a little further investigation may well show that the inclusion of a median strip is not the perfect solution. As I say, my personal view is that blocking of moving across the intersection and blocking right-hand turns will lead to far less driver distraction and will lead to a very safe outcome, which will A, reduce the crash history, make it a much safer intersection, but B, will also improve the amenity for our local residents. So much as I support 95% of what Councillor Pearl has said, I still believe the course of action that I'm proposing and that Councillor Sirikoff has seconded is the appropriate course of action to follow in this situation.
Councillors, let's put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? That motion has failed. On the back of that, Councillor Pearl, you are happy to bring the original recommendation?
Very happy to move that, Madam Mayor.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Copsey. Councillor Pearl.
I'll reserve, thank you.
Councillor Copsey.
Thank you. Oh my God, these glasses and this mask, it is not a combo I'm going to repeat. Sorry. I just would like to thank the councillors for the debate this evening. I understand some of the points of view that have been put forward, and I appreciate councillors bringing those points of view to the chamber. For me, the determining factor here is that it's a known black spot and we know the pattern of crashes that are occurring here. I'm simply not comfortable when we have a recommended intervention available to us, which is, as has been pointed out in debate, a trial that's going to take place over the next 12 months, which will evaluate how well that works or not. And I think that we do need to act in order to prevent further crashes at this intersection. So I'm very happy to second the officer's rec tonight.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Martin.
You've heard my comments on what I believe is the appropriate course of action. However, doing nothing is certainly not an option, and reluctantly under the circumstances, given that my preferred position isn't there, I can't not sit back and let us do nothing. I need to support Councillor Pearl's motion now.
Councillor Councillor.
Can I raise an amendment on the fly? Yeah. Okay. Instead of closing the, I guess it's not 3.2. I might pull up my email. It'll be instead of the closing the median. It is. Sorry, bear with me. Okay. Uh, 3.2 would read, endorse a 9-month trial that prohibits traffic from Bridge Street and Glover Street, from crossing Pickles Street, and prohibits traffic from making right-hand turns from Bridge and Glover Street, into Pickles Street, sorry, at the intersection of Pickle Street, Bridge Street and Glover Street. Do you want to just read this? Sorry. I didn't expect it all to go this way, but now I know.
Should we do that? Would everyone like to take a 5-minute break while we kind of get this up and going, and then we'll come back? So let's take a 5-minute break so the officers can check the governance around it, and so we'll take a 5-minute break, everyone, and come. We're back. Okay, thank you, everyone. So we will resume in our discussion around where are we up to? 10.3, the Pickle Street, Bridge Street and Glover Street intersection. Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. I'll resume by actually withdrawing my suggestion there because it's too substantial. I've been given advice by governance. So I'd like to foreshadow that should this fail, that I will raise it as an alternative motion. And the reason being that it's still an improvement on the intersection, but as in that we're taking action, but it's still a good result for the neighbouring properties.
Thank you. So I'm just going back to our debate. So Councillor Pearl has moved it. I can't remember who said. Councillor Copsey seconded it. Councillor Consolo, would you like to speak to it, or would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Councillor, a procedural question, yes?
So my procedural question, Mayor, is if both these motions fail, where does that leave the traffic treatment of the Pickle Street intersection?
It would be an alt rec by Councillor Consolo, is that not right?
Yeah. If both motions fail, where does that leave us?
Oh, you're talking about, so the 3 motions fail. Yeah. So then the item has failed and we'll have to... Kirsty, what would have happened?
Through you, Mayor, in the event that a motion has failed, the report would need to come back to Council for a resolution at a later date.
Then we go, okay. So would anyone else like to speak to this current, which is the original officer's recommendation? I will briefly speak to this one. I am going to support this one for the following reasons. It's really hard when you're a ward councillor, particularly because your constituency reaches out, and we had to make a very hard one in Canal many years ago, and it was difficult. However, once it's in place, it has become a safe intersection, and I agree with Councillor Pearl, I have to vote on safety, and people do adjust their behaviours, and although there isn't much traffic right now, at some point in the future traffic will increase, and so I do think that we need to trial this and take the 12 months to reassess. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. You can send the hate mail to marcus.pearl@portphillip.vic.gov.au. It's not Councillor Martin's or Councillor Consolo's fault that this is occurring. It's very much mine, so happy to receive your hate mail. But what I am happy to see is we're finally getting a trial and some action, which is something that a lot of people criticise Council for not doing, and they can't do it in terms of what we've done, particularly for the past 5 years on Pickle Street and the adjoining intersections, etc. Yes, this is going to mean more increased traffic flow temporarily to side streets, and that's going to disadvantage people, and you'd be naive to think that that is not the case, and I'm fully aware of that, and I apologise to those residents. Again, as I said before, there are winners and there are losers, but my job as a councillor and as your ward councillor is to sit here and take a holistic picture, in this case based around safety. It's a trial. We'll see how it goes for 12 months. If the safety benefits aren't there and the amenity benefits certainly outweigh those safety benefits, we will reverse the trial. So I hope, councillors, this is enough for you to support this motion. It's not an easy decision, I grant that, but I think it's deeply the right decision to make. And again, feel free to email your hate mail and concerns or feedback on the trial or anything to do with the trial to me. More than happy to take your requests.
All right, councillors, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against?
Division.
Yep, that motion has passed, so we'll call it again in division. All those in favour? Councillor Baxter, Councillor Bond, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Copsey, Councillor Pearl. All those against? Councillor Consolo, Councillor Sirikoff, Councillor Martin and Councillor Clark. That motion is carried. Moving along to 12.1, which is the Palace Foreshore event proposal. So, councillors, do we have any questions for officers on this? I do have a few more, if I may. Lauren Bilkower to join us. There were some revised dates that were mentioned. Would you be able to clarify that for us, please?
Sorry, through you, Mayor. The latest revised dates that I've seen for performance only start later in February. So performance is on the 25th and 26th of February, and then the 5th, 6th, 12th, 13th, 18th and 19th of March. And then the performance dates for the November-December are 18th, 19th, 25th and 26th of November, and the 2nd and 3rd of December, so finishing much earlier away from the Christmas period.
Can I clarify, though, there would have that's not an automatic. If we should pass this motion, it's not automatic. There would be a process of assessing this first lot before we would then come back and approve the November dates.
Through you, Mayor, yes, we will still have to receive the required information for the permit. However, we are willing to support these dates, providing all the necessary documentation can be provided.
I do have a few more questions, but do other councillors have any? If I can continue. I was wondering, I wanted to take up a couple of points that were made. There was a reference to have we looked at other date events like that one, like what happening in Kintani Gardens to spread the love over a longer period, obviously people coming to St Kilda. And the second part of the question was what kind of consultation process was undertaken kind of with that wider community? Those are my two questions for now.
So through you, Mayor, all impacted traders and the relevant trader associations were contacted in the week commencing 19th of July, and we have written correspondence with all of the traders from that time. So that's, I think, about 3 weeks ago now. And the results of all of that consultation was included in the report that you have in front of you this evening. We didn't do wider community consultation on this event as it is a trial activation, so we haven't gone out to the community on this one. And sorry, the second part of the
have we compared what else might?
Calendar.
Yeah, it might be.
Yes, sorry. So we do. Council does conduct a major event calendar, and we do try and spread out events as much as possible. Obviously, through the duration of February and March, we do have some other events. And November, December. One of the exciting things about this proposal is the opportunity to partner with the St Kilda Festival and work with Pavilion and Live Nation on that. So in some instances, that's a really exciting opportunity to have both together. But we have sort of events spread out throughout the whole year. So there will be some occasions where there are multiple events, but many where there are not as well.
Councillor Bond.
A couple of people who have emailed us have raised concerns about noise from the April Sun event. My experience was that I didn't get a single noise complaint from that event, and in fact I had people who would normally contact me to let me know if noise is too loud, contact me and let me know that they were very, very happy with the volumes that were emanating from the April Sun event. Live Nation explained that it was due to the positioning of the stage, positioning of speakers, some technology they were using, and if you stood behind the stage you could barely hear it. So I'm of the view that the noise wasn't overly loud coming from there. But did we get any complaints to council from anyone from the April Sun, which I think was about 13 or 14 events over a month?
Through you, Mayor, no, we didn't receive complaints from the community regarding the April Sun event. In fact, we received a lot of compliments from the community.
Any further questions? Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. Has an updated site plan been received? Because the one in the document I have is from the 17th of June, and it doesn't actually show the car parking on it, the 19 spaces, and I'm wondering if that 19 spaces is actually during the day before the event, so like event days, but not necessarily during the event at the nighttime.
Through you, Mayor, the 19 spaces under the current proposal would be for the day and the evening. However, as some of the speakers referenced this evening, there were further discussions this afternoon between the producers and the Foreshore traders, and a decision has been made to ensure that there's at least 160 parks available in the close area, so including the car park and the wider area as well, so including the lower Esplanade, which we now believe will be able to be open throughout the events by using traffic management staff. So there will be revised site plans submitted as part of the permitting process.
Any other questions? Councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? Do I need to move it to move an amendment though? You can move an amendment now. You can move something different. I'll move something different. Yes. Sorry, I'm just clarifying from my own head. Yes, I'd like to move something different. So I have a small amendment, and I would like some advice from governance to please to kind of capture some of the concerns of people that we've heard from, but also the meeting that went this afternoon and a whole lot of issues kind of agreed upon. So the wording of it would be, when I find it, is to add, sorry, my computer's very slow, to add a 3.3, which requires the event permit holder to work closely with council officers between now and the event to ensure that any negative impact to local traders is mitigated as much as possible. Do I need to adjust that to say, and ensures the agreements are fulfilled or anything like that, given what happened late this afternoon? Or does that capture enough of, that captures enough of what has occurred? All right, so that would be my amendment to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bond. I'll just reserve my right. Councillor Bond.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. These events, in particular, this event on the Triangle, it ticks so many boxes for the City of Port Phillip in terms of economic development. Is something we often talk a lot about, and I sit there and say, well, how can we really make a difference? How can we really, as a city, create jobs and stimulate business? Well, this is an example of one of those where we are able to do that by approving this here tonight. We've heard from a couple of speakers that over $1.6 million will go into the pockets of artists directly as a result of these events, plus another $1 million in various other employment to people for event staff, cleaners, etc., etc. This ticks a lot of our boxes in our live music plan, where we want to bring back and revive and develop and enhance live music in St Kilda, which is specifically one of the actions of the live music action plan that we all supported. This has overwhelming local support, based on one Facebook post last night in a thread where, I'll conservatively say somewhere between 95 and 99% of people indicated support for this particular proposal, which is surprising, but it's just a great result where you can see that the overwhelming majority of those in the community do actually support this. We had the previous April Sun event that happened down here where there were no noise complaints. I remember I left one of the concerts and stood behind the stage, and on the outside, on the upper Esplanade, and you could hardly hear a thing. It was surprisingly quiet, and that was due to the positioning of the stage and the positioning of the speakers and the technology they were employing for that particular event, which certainly alleviates a lot of the residents' complaints that can occur as a result of many other music festivals in and around St Kilda. We have heard the traders from Donovan, Stokehouse, Luna Park, etc. They are concerned about the loss of parking. They are concerned about the impact this event may have or will have on their businesses, and hopefully the conversations that occurred late this afternoon between the applicant and a few of the people who believe they will be impacted resolves a lot of those concerns, and council will do whatever it can to ensure that we're able to address any remaining concerns or concerns that council can assist with. So I wholeheartedly support this event. I think the April Sun event was great. It was probably at a time of year where it was a little bit cold for outdoor music events, and it was probably the first music event I think in Melbourne post-COVID, so it was a little bit of trial and error. But now that that's out of the way, I think these events will be bigger and better, and certainly bring a lot more people to St Kilda. And I know from talking to traders that whenever there is a good event in St Kilda, whether it's the Carmen's Fun Run or that Ice House concert in Katani Guds, people do frequent our businesses before and after. I hear it time and time again that traders saying they would run off their feet the previous night once the concert finished, everyone came back. You see the queues outside the Espy and the Prince of Wales and all these other events once the events are completed. So we do know these events do bring people to St Kilda, and they do hang around afterwards and in frequent many of the local businesses. Finally, I'd just like to say that I'm of the view that the St Kilda Triangle is way too valuable a site to just be a car park. I think we need to use it a lot more for various activations and various events. Long term, I would like to see that car park put underground so that we maintain the car park for the benefit of the people who want to come and frequent all those surrounding businesses. And above that car park, I would love to see a live music venue or an amphitheatre, an outdoor amphitheatre that caters for events and live music and some park and grassland there. So that's my long-term, what I would like to see on that site. And all of these things that we're approving here tonight are sort of hoping to I'm hoping they will build a case and an argument for a live music venue of some description, whether it's palace, ballet to dance. There's been so many iterations in that particular area over the years. See something like that return to St Kilda. and especially now that there is a gap in the live music market created by the closure of Festival Hall. So, we've got an opportunity. It probably would be financially viable, and approving events like this tests that space for a permanent longer-term option that would certainly benefit all businesses in that area with additional car parking, additional infrastructure, permanent infrastructure. So that's just what I would like to see, and hopefully we see something happen on that front in the near future, and whatever council can do to facilitate that or assist that, I would love to push along. But yeah, certainly urge my fellow councillors to wholeheartedly support this event, because I think they're just such good events for St Kilda, and I think everything that St Kilda is about is captured in these events, with the live music and the crowds and coming to St Kilda to have fun. I know some residents don't like to hear this, but we are Melbourne's playground, and we do have a very, very strong role to play in this space. So I'll leave it there.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. I appreciate that we're testing ideas to help get people back to St Kilda. It's great for the reputation for live music. I think that we sincerely want the local businesses to survive and respect that the decision will have an impact. The last-minute conversations that we've been told about seem to help, so that's good to see. But I also echo what Andrew is saying with, Councillor Bond, that it isn't really a car park versus live music exactly that we're choosing here. It's of course I would choose live music if it's that. This car park really is, it's an odd place, not odd. I know, I'm new to council, so I don't know the whole back history, and I'm sure I'll have to watch that video. But that we should look at what this space should be. And I think it'd be fair for people to understand what our policy is here. Maybe this is grabbed into open space policy, that it is meant to be used in this way, not just a trial and asking permission, that it becomes more of a permanent idea. Thank you.
What do you want, Councillor Powell?
Thanks. Albeit not in the council plan, I'm very eager for this council to do something with the Triangle site. I think it's a legacy that we're now ready to contend with, albeit a vexed issue. And these small type of activations is something we've been trying to do for a very, very long time. And up to this point, with some mixed results, and this one seems to be sticking, and it's completely congruent with a number of strategies that council has for the municipality and St Kilda in general. Councillor Bond refers to a live music action plan, etc. It has I understand the concerns of traders, particularly on the Foreshore area, and that's to be taken into account, and I have sympathy for them, but generally speaking, I think the net benefits of this far outweigh any negatives that are caused, and I'm very confident that those businesses hopefully will get a increase in patronage from the secondary effects of these events happening. So, albeit there's a loss of car space there, I think the utility of those car spaces through this event is a terrific use, and I was very, very excited the first time this was put up to council, and very happy that this proposal is coming forward. And again, I think it's time for this council perhaps to make some brave decisions around the future of the Triangle. And there's a new generation of councillors here that are probably apt and ready to start confronting what has been a fairly vexed issue for a number of people at all levels of government for many decades.
Councillor Martin.
I'll speak specifically to the 3.3 of the amendment, but before I do that, again, I'm amazingly finding myself in full agreement with Councillor Bond and with Councillor Pearl. I think you've opened... You're supporting what I think is a fantastic initiative that Council's doing with Live Nation, but also flagging the issues about what we need to do in the Triangle area. So once again, thank you to both Councillor Bond and Councillor Pearl for bringing that to our attention, and to Councillor Consolo. My only concern with this event was I know that there were some of our traders who were very concerned. We heard them speak earlier today, and Mayor, I'd like to thank you and the council officers for putting together that amendment, which I think neatly addresses the concerns that we heard those people speak passionately about. Yes, it's wonderful that we're activating the triangle. Yes, this is going to be a fantastic event, but it's also important that we do look after our local traders, and I'm delighted that we've got this amendment, which I think rounds out the motion beautifully.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Copsey.
Thank you. I'm supportive of the activation temporarily here and pleased to see this report coming tonight. We know that our performers and our live music industry have been some of the hardest hit by the events of the last 18 months, and anything that we can do as a council to not only support rejuvenation in the local area and activation, which has been really severely impacted also by the seasonal and tourist nature of the local economy here. So I think that this fills lots of gaps in that space. But for me, the opportunity for people to perform, for people to see live music again, for me certainly every time that that's happened since COVID hit has been a very special moment for me, and I know a lot of other people who really miss going to gigs. And I know that performers really miss performing to those audiences. So I'm very excited to see this proposal and know that it will bring heaps of life, economic activity, but I think most importantly joy and connection, which we've all missed so much. I also think that this is really important because we do need to grapple with how this industry recovers and goes forward, and I will be really pleased if we can see some testing around how these events can be made as safe as possible, but most importantly possible. So I'm sure we'll see lots more progress in that regard. And I also note there's some really good proactive measures mentioned in the proposal around community outreach and support for emerging artists and so on as well. So it's not just about what's occurring on the Triangle for this period, but also some really great development and support for emerging artists and so on. So I think that's fantastic too. I'll be supporting the proposal tonight.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sirikoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would also like to acknowledge the hardships that both the music industry and hospitality businesses have endured during the past 18 months. And it'll be great to see some activation going on in the Triangle. Live Nation has provided an attractive proposal to benefit the music industry and local traders and to re-energise the St Kilda area. Live Nation has also put forward in response to the concerns of the Foreshore Trader Group the following support of revised dates for coming up to the Christmas period, revised dates for their events, especially prior to the Christmas period, by bringing forward their dates. And so hopefully this will reduce any impacts on functions held by the Foreshore Trader Groups. Also a valet service to support the Foreshore Groups, Foreshore restaurant patrons, along with a Foreshore liaison officer, and alternative parking measures and locations for coaches delivering party goers to Luna Park Christmas events. Given these offers and 6 months to sort out any issues, I am in support of the Palace Foreshore event for next February and March. I would also like to ask Council if it can do anything such as remove any parking red tape to assist the Foreshore businesses during this period to encourage patrons to the concerned businesses in the area. As many traders have said that car parking is essential to bring tourists and locals through their doors. I will also be taking note when councillors will be presenting to Council in April a report of the outcomes of this event, and which should be noting any positive or negative outcomes of the February-March music event, and along with how Live Nation was able to reduce any negative impacts on the neighbouring businesses. For me, the collaboration between these groups will influence any future Live Nation events occurring in the St Kilda Triangle, especially Christmas, the December Christmas period. I would also like to encourage everyone out there to get their COVID vaccination as soon as possible so that venues like the Palais can be opening their doors once again and not having to resort to having further impacts on car parks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? If not, I'm going to close. I will say a few things. This actual report this situation has stressed me for the last few days because I'm very aware of the challenges for the foreshore traders and hospitality and St Kilda at large, but I'm also very aware of the huge impact on the entertainment industry. And the one that I want to mention the most, and we have a local resident, Simon, who has been a very vocal advocate and still ground to gain on the events industry, which there's lots of smaller events industries, and although this is a big event, events is the hidden part of kind of the entertainment industry at large that have been decimated as well. So this project in itself ticks so many boxes in terms of providing work for people who haven't had work in over a year. And I know that there are challenges around accommodating car parks and access for other businesses in the area. I'm really happy to hear that meeting went ahead this afternoon and that some appropriate kind of ways to address the situations and concerns was reached. I'm really happy to hear that. One of the other things that I'm really heartened that I will be supporting this for is to hear from Jay that 87% of the people that travel to their events comes either by public transport or by other dropped off by cars or cabs or whatever, and that heartens me. So that will actually relieve the pressure around people seeking parking in those events, and that the parking can be for other properties or venues. Sorry, I think the thing that strikes me the most is that, as we've all mentioned, there is a long road for this industry to recover. There was an amazing paper, and I can't think of the name of it, written by Alison Pennington and Ben Altham just last week, talking about the role that governments of all levels will have to be in order to help this industry recover. And in that note, I'm already starting to do it on behalf of this council, and I look forward to continuing to advocate to state and federal governments for funding for small and big local events, especially in areas that are not just the CBD or not just regional areas. The inner city also needs support and voucher systems and that. I look forward to having that conversation with the ministers. But the other area that is greatly needed is an insurance scheme so events can go ahead. So there is some kind of insurance payback scheme. So that's my call out to other levels of government in this space. I'm happy to support this proposal. I note the challenges for local traders, but I feel some of those are addressed. But I also know that this is part of a bigger conversation on how we help this industry survive and once more flourish, because it will be a little bit of time. So, councillors, I'm going to put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Let's move on to tenancy, proposed tenancy agreements. This is 13.1 to various children's services, childcare centres and kindergartens. Councillors, do we have any questions for officers? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Councillor Pell to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Martin. What was that shake of your head? You're not moving it?
No, I'm good. I'll reserve.
Oh,
sorry, I thought someone had already seconded it. I
was like, did I read
ahead of myself?
Thank you. Councillor Martin. Okay, so Councillor Martin, would anyone else like to speak to the report? I'll just quickly say our community groups do run fantastic childcare, and we are so lucky to have such excellent services in our municipality, and so I'm very happy to support this. Councillor Councillor.
Yep. Thank you. This is one of the major ways that council supports childcare in our area, and it's very important because it's very expensive to go to childcare, and it'd be far more expensive if they had to pay commercial rates. So I appreciate that. They're very short leases to get them, and it's taken a long time to get to this point. So I respect that this process is going to start again, but it's all about aligning it. So pleased to see that there haven't been any submissions, and I'll support this.
Councillor Pearl. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Moving on to 13.2, which is the proposed tenancy agreement with Lady Forster Kindergarten Incorporated at 63B Ormond, Esplanade, Elwood. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officers? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover or something? Councillor Martin to move. I'm happy. Councillor Councillor to second. Councillor Martin.
I echo what Councillor Councillor said when we were speaking about the other childcare centres. I've been working with the Lady Forster Centre for over 20 years and one of our many wonderful childcare centres, and it's fantastic that they've got a little bit more certainty about where they're heading.
Councillor Councillor, would anyone else like to speak to that? This was a motion that I brought myself under the last term, and I'm really glad to see it get to this point where we're signing the lease for that extended period of time. So I look forward to seeing the kids, cleaning the beaches and helping become the next little environmental citizens of the next generation. Let's, Councillor Martin, did you want to close? Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 13.3 is proposed sale of land abutting 115, 117 and 119 Glen Huntley Road, Elwood. Any questions for the officers? If not, do I have a mover or something for this or something different? Don't be shy. I'm happy to move this. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Martin. I reserve my right. Councillor Martin. Would anyone else like to speak? Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 13.4 is the records of informal meetings of council. Do we have any questions, councillors, for the officers? If not, do I have a mover for this or something different? Councillor Copsey to move. Who's going to be my seconder? Councillor Baxter to second. Do Councillor Copsey, Councillor Baxter, would anyone else like to speak to the motion? If not, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The final item in our reports tonight is 13.5, which is a psychological safe work policy. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officers? If not, do I have a mover for this or something different? Councillor Martin to move, Councillor Clark to second. Councillor Martin.
Mayor, I'm a little older than the rest of the people in the room and probably those people watching on Webex as well, and I can remember the days of Bob Menzies, Eddie Ward, Google him if you can't remember him, Paul Keating. I spent my childhood listening to Parliament. I used to love the cut and thrust of Parliament. It was really entertaining. I then managed to get myself involved in union politics in my younger days. Very exciting stuff. And then in the last couple of years I've started listening into our council debates, and sometimes our council debates remind me a little bit of the days when I used to listen to Parliament back in the 60s and the 70s. We get very passionate. We sometimes don't always realise the impact of what we're doing on our fellow councillors or on our council officers, and I think we need a little reminder just to make sure that we all stay in that safe place. And sometimes we may think that we're in a safe place, but we need to remember that we're dealing with other people as well. We need to ensure that everyone's in that safe place, and I think that this policy is going to help us do that, as we're all very passionate about. We're all giving up our time, 20 and 30 hours a week, because we really believe in the city and want to do wonderful things. But sometimes we just need to be gently reminded that we need to look at the impact of our actions and our words on others, and I think this will help us do this, and I commend this policy to Council.
Councillor Clark.
I was seeking to move the motion, not to second it, so I withdraw that, please.
I don't know that we can technically, or you can withdraw it. I need to check with governance because we've already started to talk to the debate. Can I just check with governance? You don't have to vote for it if you've seconded it. You've just seconded it to bring to the table.
I know that, but I didn't second it. I put up my hand for the moving.
I don't think we can change it. I need to check governance. I'm sorry, Councillor Clark, because we've moved and the mover has spoken. It will go on record that you've seconded the motion. Would you like to speak to it? This is your opportunity.
Sorry, point of order. Under Division 4, it states that the mover can only speak once it's been seconded, and it wasn't seconded.
But
You
he's
might have
spoken
called a
already.
seconder,
But
if she didn't accept the second, then there is no
point
seconder.
Point of order. We'll follow that up because it was not clear to me that there was no seconding when I said it out loud. So could we just get a point of order? Just going to adjourn for 2 minutes, folks. In the need to keep the council meeting moving, I'm willing to restart the debate. However, councillors, if I declare you as seconded or moved in error, you need to declare that immediately so that I do not move forward in the process for future reference. Okay, so that's how that will work. But so we'll go back to the beginning. Councillor Martin, you'll get to speak twice.
Can I just ask a clarifying question if we're going back to the start, if we could? Sorry, we actually moved quite quickly. I was sitting here reading the document and wasn't able to ask a question. So, in relation, the policy as it stands...
Hang on a sec. So,
Excuse me, Nick. Can I just give you some advice?
okay, so I did ask for questions. We may have moved quickly, so I'm restarting the motion, but I'm not going back to questions on this one because we did have plenty of time for questions. I am going to go with Councillor Martin to move, but I need another seconder, please. Councillor Copsey to second. Councillor Martin.
So, Madam Mayor, for the record, do I need to repeat everything I've said, or can we just leave that?
Through you, Mayor, for clarity, because the debate hadn't started under the point of order that Councillor Pearl raised, you'd need to speak again to the motion and then the seconder will be able to speak.
I'm not sure how I go trying to repeat what I said off the cuff, but if I can try and précis, my background is a politics tragic. I grew up listening to debates in federal parliament, quite robust and vigorous debates with, as I said earlier, if you Google people like Bob Menzies and Eddie Ward and the way they used to get stuck into each other, it was quite entertaining. Then we had people like Paul Keating later in life. I cut my teeth in union politics in my 20s, but times have changed, and sometimes here in our chamber and when we're in meetings that the public can't attend, we're very passionate here in council. We give up our 30 hours a week. We believe in particular is we just occasionally, while we think we're in a safe space with what we're saying or doing, we're not always sure where. Sometimes we're not perhaps thinking about where our other colleagues are. And in these more enlightened times, now that I'm in my old age, I think we need to be very careful that when we're entering into debate or providing advice to our colleagues or to council officers, we need to be very careful that we're doing it in a way where our colleagues feel safe. And we also need to be able to call out when we don't feel safe and let people know that as well. For example, I'll give an example. In my last job as a school principal, in a staff meeting, one of my colleagues said something that I thought at the time was quite ridiculous. I made that observation. I was later made aware that my colleague was in tears in the staff room, and it took an awful lot of grovelling to try and convince her that I hadn't meant to be rude. I hadn't meant to give any offence at all, but I should have been more careful. The documentation that we've got in this policy is just a little reminder to us that we need to exercise that care, and there is going to be some guidance in the associated policies that go with it, so that when we come to the chamber, when we meet in briefings, when we're providing advice to each other and to council officers, we just remember how other people would feel if they were in the same situation as us. And yeah, I think there's some very good advice, and it'll make the next 3.5 years of this council a very, very pleasant place to be working in.
Councillor Copsey.
Thank you. I'm pleased that this policy has come to us, and thank the officers for their work in developing it. Over the last really difficult period, I think one of the silver linings of the discussions that have come through the COVID pandemic has been an increased awareness of the importance of mental health, reducing stigma around speaking out around mental health, and also a bit more of an understanding that psychological safety is a really important part of being safe at work, and is just as important as physical safety, which has had so much attention over the past few decades, and I think real progress has been made. I think that this is a good step for our organisation to be acknowledging the importance of taking steps to ensure psychological safety as well. I echo the observations of Councillor Martin. I think it's really good for us to be taking this proactive step to ensure that we are creating an environment where we as a council can receive the best advice and making sure that staff are feeling that their frank and fearless advice is appreciated and sought by council in order to aid our decision making. I think this is a really important step. I'm glad to see it progressed and acknowledge that there will be further policies reviews to come out of this and look forward to seeing those. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. We passed a motion in the last term of council to begin moving on this, and I voted for that, and I'll vote for this. We have seen across Victoria a number of circumstances where councillors in particular have made a really unsafe workplace for their staff, a psychologically unsafe workplace for their staff through bad behaviour, through public attacks on staff and stuff like that. And we've seen that in other areas across Victoria. And what has happened in quite a few of those cases are work cover claims, in some cases lawsuits, in some cases councils have been sacked for putting their staff at risk and each other at risk like that. So I see this policy as being a really important, weapon in the arsenal when it comes to how we protect against really bad workplace culture that we know can happen. We've seen it elsewhere. So that we can make sure that we're taking care of our staff and they can continue to do their best by our community. I think that adoption of this policy and our best attempts to adhere to it is really key to demonstrating to the community and to our organisation that we're serious about people's safety.
Would anyone else like to talk to the motion, speak to the motion? Councillor Pearl.
It's taken a long time for this to come back, but this was put up at the 11th hour of the last council, the final meeting by the then mayor who put this up. There's a few concerns I have about the operation of the policy, which I wasn't able to prosecute through questions, and they're not really clarifying questions to the motion. So by the terms of the standing orders, it would be, the meeting procedures, it would be remiss of me to do that. But particularly pertaining to complaints about councillors, whether or not councillors have an opportunity to get those reviewed isn't clear in the policy, particularly if they're logged in the systems that's talking about here as incidents isn't clear. Processes of natural justice are obviously very, very important, and we've seen that with human rights law, etc., that people need to have an understanding of what allegations, if any, have been putting against them. So under 5.1, I don't see that as clear. The other concerns I have pertain to, and I spoke about this when we first looked at this at the very last council meeting when this was put up, the concept that culture eats policy for breakfast, and if you want to change the culture, change the culture. You can wrap policies and lawyers around stuff as much as you like, but what you generally get is increasing piles of paper, and there is a place for that. But I was hoping we'd have a succinct policy which reflected where we're at and what the values were and what the expectations were. Under 4.1 and 4.2, this policy seems to indicate that this is just the beginning. So it says that we will establish and implement an employee code of conduct, establish and implement an equal opportunity discrimination, harassment and bullying policy, a councillor contact guidelines, a media and social media policy, a complaints policy, and 5.4 is establish a code of conduct for councillors, which I assume means amend the existing code of conduct for councillors. So if we're to change the culture of the organisation, let's focus on the culture as opposed to, I think this is now going to kick the can down to create a substantial body of work, and I'll be interested to see if anything of these policies improves the culture. Ultimately, what improves culture is leadership and buy-in through that leadership of individual councillors and the way that they correspond with the public, the way they correspond with staff, and the way staff and the public correspond with them. So I have some reservations around how this has been put together and the implementation of it and the amount of work that's actually going to flow out of this and how we measure effectiveness under this policy, plus concerns around basic natural justice, which I don't think have been covered off in the document itself. There's a raft of laws and legislation under the Local Government Act and existing complaint processes for councillors. There is a gap between councillors and staff, and I think a lot of that is well addressed here, and there is very much merit in that. But there's a number of gaps, particularly in 5.1, and where we actually go with 4.5 and 4.1 and 4.2 as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this policy and what actual perceived or actual changes it makes to culture. But councillors, if you want to change the culture, you have to change the way you behave to people as opposed to what the policy says, because in my previous experience, and I was very, very hopeful that this Local Government Act would change it, but it appears, again, appears to be a bit of a toothless tiger, particularly pertaining to conflict of interest and behaviour interests. But we'll see what happens. But ultimately, if you want to change the culture, that's in our hands, not in a policy document or the hands of the lawyers, which is the approach, unfortunately, I think we've gone down. But let's see if this works.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Councillor.
Thank you. I don't actually have any experience in politics, not even back in school, and so that interest in seeing the debates, it's nice when it's healthy, but when it crosses a line, it turns a lot of people off politics, and that's where I sit on it. And I don't care for the excuse that it's just a political game. I don't want to play it, and I don't want to be a part of it, and I want to be a part and think we all need to be a part of changing the culture for the better. You get so much more out of people when they feel they're in a level playing field, mutual respect, there's no fear of repercussion, essentially a psychologically safe workplace. Now, I've had a friend take his own life in an unsafe workplace, psychologically unsafe workplace, so I know that it's really important, but it's also about getting the most out of people. We hire people to do these jobs, and the staff, and I think they've been doing a wonderful job. You know, people get very passionate in the debates on council and maybe step over that line, and I hope I've never done that, but this is good to have a policy that might try to close the gap there with staff and councillors. And I appreciate that the social media part is to come, because mostly social media can have a good connection with the community, but it's also a minefield, so some improvement in that space will be welcome. And lastly, sometimes if you don't see the problem, maybe you are the problem. That's always all of us should think about at all times. So thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'm going to take a few minutes. I may be Pollyanna, but I got into politics, and part of my belief is that I think politics can be done differently. And I don't think it has to be so toxic and negative and out to get each other. I think we can have robust debates and still be respectful. So we brought this at the final hour of the last council because it was needed. And I believe it's needed on this council. And I'm really glad to get to this point, because it's a framework that tries to capture all the different legislation that we are governed by, that looks out, for each other. That's essentially what we're kind of framing here in a much more easily accessible way, and identifying where the gaps exist in the workplace that we are, for officers, for each other, for the CEO, looking at where the gaps are in the process to allow all of these things, natural justice, fairness and all of those things, but in order to actually allow robust debate in a respectful way. Councillor Pearl talks about culture. Well, let me tell you, this is only here because culture wasn't working, the culture wasn't changing under the last council, and I fear that the culture needs this framework in order to change. We need to clearly call out the issues, identify them, rather than just saying, oh, you know, we've done group dynamics. There's been lots of things that have been tried before we got to this point, and I just think that it's really important to acknowledge, not to excuse it, to say that it's a culture. The culture starts with us, and if we have a clear framework, we can stick to it. If it's not clear, hopefully this document will allow it to be clear. So in my role as Mayor, part of my role is to help guide the group and help support us in our roles, and I talk to other mayors, and this kind of psychologically safe workplace, or not psychologically safe workplace, is happening around the state, and lots of mayors are worrying and suffering through it. And it's not good enough. I actually think it's not good enough. So I'm not talking just about us, I'm talking generally. And I need to see how the mayors are grappling with it. And a lot of previous councillors were hoping the Local Government Act would make us all smarten up and behave differently, but it seems to be not having the desired effect, unfortunately. So I think that we have to, and I know that this is being brought to the attention of the local government minister. And as Councillor Councillor said, we need good people who care about our community and getting good outcomes for our community too, and a diverse group to get involved in politics, not just people who are tough as. That is not a good outcome for our community. But why the hell would they want to get involved if they feel like they will be possibly bullied, possibly pilloried, all the things that make an unsafe psychological workplace? Why would they? And so I am 100% in support of this. It's not just a piece of paper. It's not documents. This is about changing the culture. This is about saying, hey, how about we treat each other well and do politics differently? Some of the behaviour that happens in councils across Victoria and probably across Australia is unacceptable workplace behaviour anywhere else. So I think it's time that councils generally and councillors generally step up. It's time. Enough. And I am really passionate about this, and I know certain councillors don't like when I get passionate, but this is an area to be passionate about. This is a framework we can hang our hats on and understand that other people, it's the impact you have. Some days, this week, some days it's easy, I call it my suit of armour. Some days it's easy to put on my suit of armour and come to work. And some days it's not. And that, I imagine, is true for each and every one of us in this room and out there. So we have to be aware, and we have to be kind. We're going through the biggest change, COVID. We're all in levels of stress we never thought we would be in before. So I just ask you to support this motion, support this framework, work together, treat each other with respect and dignity, and just remember that each day you don't know how thick someone else's armour is that day. All right, that's me done. Councillor Martin, or would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think all people recognise the right of employees and workers to work free of intimidation, discrimination, be treated fairly in all aspects of the work, and that's something that I'm involved in every day. Over the years, most workplaces have developed policies to ensure that the welfare of their employees is paramount and recognise that this is a critical path to a successful business. I was unaware that the Council didn't feel that they have developed a safe workplace, and thinking that this policy will change behaviour is like thinking the Code of Conduct has changed behaviour. It hasn't. Many residents are probably not aware of the policies and procedures that the Council currently has, and there's a list of them, and I'm going to read them because there's so many of them. These are the current policies in place. Councillor and Staff Code of Conduct, Council OHS Policy, Councillor Transparency Policy, Audit Committee Terms of Reference, Councillor Contact Protocols, Equal Opportunity Policy, Council Diversity and Inclusion Policy, Customer Complaint Policy, OHS and Wellbeing Plan, Councillor Governance Rules, HR Policies and Procedures, Safety Management System and OHS Reporting, EAP and Wellbeing Program for Staff, EAP for Councillors, It would seem to me that the Council has more than enough policies, procedures, processes and support services in place available to Council and its officers. The proposal to now develop a psychologically safe workplace policy is unnecessary and complete overkill. It lays the foundations for the Council to develop a whole new range of policies dealing with themselves and potentially a new media and social policy, not just for Council, and maybe it is appropriate for Council, but also for councillors. Some people potentially are going to see this a way of controlling freedom of speech and trying to hold councils account for differing community views. But perhaps the most terrible part of this policy is, and apart from trying to hide behind endless policy creation to deal with culture, is the unnecessary navel-gazing and internal focus to suggest that developing this policy, the cost to the community of developing this policy, the waste of council resources and the self-indulgent focus on ourselves when we already have the list of policies available to us to deal with issues, seems to me to be at the expense of important issues that the residents need us to be focusing on, and is extraordinarily extravagant. For all of those reasons, I will not be supporting this motion.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Do we have any idea how much this policy actually cost? Maybe, no, yeah, okay, we won't go with that one. We'll take that on notice. Great. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sirikoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also like to make a point, as Councillor Clark has made, that the Council already has many policies and legislative processes to protect and support the safety of employees in the workplace, and Councillor Clark has named quite a number of them. I do respect the safety of all Council staff and councillors, anybody in the workplace. But I'm just wondering, one of the concerns I do have with this policy is item 4.12. It mentions other steps to be considered and developed as part of this framework, which includes exploration of a media and social media policy for councillors. We already have this in place, and yet Council wants to further explore this policy. My concerns about this was raised when a councillor spoke about when supporters of a councillor make inappropriate Facebook comments, and that the councillor should be held accountable for those comments. Councillors are responsible for their own behaviour and not for others. I agree that we need to be civil and respectful when discussing issues, but this is going down the path of basically asking councillors to be responsible for other people's views, which is unrealistic. There is no
I am going to correct you on that. It's not about other people's point of views. That's just, I'm going to get a correction on that, Councillor Sirikoff.
Through you, Mayor, under Section 3 I can make a correcting statement. I think it's Section 73 of the Governance Rules, if I've got it correct, Kirsty. This policy will do two things. One, it will establish a media and social media policy, and two, that will be brought to Council. So to speculate what might be in it, I think would be incorrect at this stage, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so you may continue, but move on from that point, please.
Oh, thank you. We have a code of conduct for councillors and a code of conduct for council staff, which already covers many issues, including social media. And we know that we can't say anything misleading or defamatory. Everyone, councillors and council officers, are accountable for their own behaviour and decisions, just as in other levels of government. Inadvertently, I'm hoping this is not a form of gagging or shutting down debate, discussion or opposing points of view, whether it be speakers presenting at council chambers or in social media. We are fortunate to have freedom of speech, unlike some other countries. So I do have some reservations about this policy, and I'm not sure how I feel about how this is going to be developed. Thank you.
Would anyone else? Is that everyone who's spoken? Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Martin, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mayor. As I've mentioned earlier, I've been around a little bit longer than the rest of the people in the room here, and I've been involved in many, many, many committees. I've chaired organisations with, I won't go into my history, but shall we say I've been involved in many organisations which run in a structure very similar to the way that this council runs, and I've been fortunate to hold executive positions in many of those organisations. And of all the organisations I've been involved with, the one that I really feel where I don't feel, the organisation I felt least psychologically safe is working in our environment here in the city of Port Phillip. And I'm relatively tough and I've been around for quite a while. But as Councillor Pearl has said, and I like, whenever I speak, I try and give credit where credit's due to all of my councillors. There's very rarely when I speak in the chamber that I don't acknowledge something positive that someone else has said. And Councillor Pearl has said that culture is far more important. You can have 100,000 words, but if you don't have the right culture, then it's not going to work. And I think that's perhaps the most important thing that's been said in the chamber tonight. However, I don't believe that we, as yet, are in a situation where we are all in a psychologically safe workplace, and that's why I believe that the council, the previous council, when it voted to establish this policy, was trying to find a way of perhaps bringing to everyone's attention that we don't feel psychologically safe, and if even the development of the policy itself helps change culture, then we really need to change that culture. I think we've been in a very safe workplace today. I note that I've put up an alt-rec which has failed today, but we had a very, very healthy debate. I'd put up an alt-rec in which I was suggesting something similar, something different to an officer's recommendation, but we had an online meeting with some of the councillors in the chamber here, had an online meeting with those officers, and we went out of our way to point out to the officer that we weren't being critical, that we believed that everything they'd done was appropriate. The people in that Zoom, I think there were 3 of us sitting here, we went out of our way to make sure that our council officers felt valued and that we weren't trying to put down their opinion. The way that we've spoken to each other tonight in the various debates on that issue, on the triangle debate, we've had some excellent debates. We've shown really good respect for each other. Unfortunately, we don't always do that to each other, and I'm not going to suggest that anyone in this room would deliberately go out of their way to make someone else feel uncomfortable, but there are a number of you sitting here in this room who have rung me or have walked across parks with me. We've had tears, we've had some quite distressed people. I'm not sure how many others of you have had people do that, but I know that there are a number of you in this room who've spoken to me privately when you felt unsafe, and you've come down and spent 15 or 20 minutes or sometimes longer than that talking to me. So I've then gone home to tell my cats about what's happened. If we were in a psychologically safe workplace, that wouldn't be happening. You wouldn't need to feel that you've got those conversations with the old bloke here. Perhaps you're hoping that I'm so old that I'll just forget about it later and won't even remember. But it's happened, and I'm well aware that a number of you have felt out of your comfort zone big time. We're here to support the ratepayers of Port Phillip, or all the people of Port Phillip, and I think that's why we're all here. And I think we're all very genuine about that. But we need to think of the impact of what we're doing and how that's going to affect our council colleagues and our council officers and other people in general. And a lot of us don't always do that. And I mentioned earlier that I was brought up in an environment many years ago where it was almost like an anything goes. And if you go back and look at old transcripts of Hansard from Federal Parliament back in the 60s, or for those of you who are younger, go and listen to Paul Keating in Full Flight. And we all used to laugh at all that. Some of those comments would be so far out of whack now. Times have changed. That's not acceptable anymore. And we need to make sure that we're aware of what's acceptable. And if in developing this policy, it helps us work out where those lines are, at the end of it, hopefully we'll all feel in a much safer space. And the other thing we need to do is, as I said earlier, where we feel that someone's gone out of their, has stepped over the line, we need to feel confident enough to call that out. And I'm not sure some of us are even comfortable to do that. The conversations that I've had are people have said, I felt unsafe when X said Y. Well, why didn't you call it out at the time? I didn't feel comfortable. We need to create an environment where we're all doing our best to stay within appropriate guidelines, and we won't all do it. I'll probably step over those lines occasionally, and then hopefully people will feel confident enough to call me out. And hopefully the development of this policy will ensure that that happens. Now, I'm aware that, and as the Mayor has alluded to, this is not something that's just present with this council, this current Port Phillip Council. I know there were concerns amongst a number of councils about what happened on the last Port Phillip Council. I'm hearing horror stories of what's happening in other councils. There are other councils that have a far less psychologically safe workplace than the city of Port Phillip. On the grand scheme of things, we're not doing anywhere near as badly as our colleagues, but we can do an awful lot better. And hopefully the development of this policy, and not taking it to bed and reading it when it's finally there, just the process of going through it will bring to our attention the things that perhaps we need to do to ensure that we can serve our city far more effectively if we're all in a psychologically safe workplace. We can serve our city far more effectively if we're able to have conversations with our colleagues to say, Councillor X, colleague, I felt uncomfortable when you said that. Oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to give offence. How would you like to handle the situation in future? And we can have those conversations, because I'm not sure all of us feel safe to do that at the moment. And hopefully, if we pass this motion tonight, it's the first step in helping us address that. And I don't think my preferred outcome is just that we have a lovely document that sits on the fence or sits on the shelf. I'm hoping that the discussions that we have in the process of implementing this enables us to turn up at our meetings, to read our emails, to check our texts, to be involved in Zooms, knowing that we're feeling safe, that we're able to do our best for the people who voted for us, we're able to have our healthy disagreements, the robust conversations. I think it was Councillor Bond, was it you who used, someone used the word robust. There's nothing wrong with being robust, as long as if we step over the line, we're happy enough when we're called to account. So I commend this motion to you as the first step in making the City of Port Phillip a very psychologically safe workplace for all of our councillors, all of our council officers and all of the citizens of the best municipality in Australia.
All right, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion. All those against? That motion has passed.
Can I request a division, please?
Sure. All those in favour? Councillor Baxter, Councillor Consultor, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Copsey, Councillor Martin. All those against? Councillor Sirikoff, Councillor Pearl and Councillor Clark, and one abstention. So that motion has passed. Item 15 is notices of motion, and we don't have any notices of motions tonight. 16 is reports by councillor delegates. Do we have any reports? Councillor Martin.
I'll try to be very brief. I need to open an email first.
Should I see if someone else would like to do a report?
Give me 30 seconds.
30 seconds,
right.
okay.
Look, I'll speak from memory, Mayor. The Older Persons Advisory Committee has come up with two recommendations that it wants me to bring to Council formally. One is a motion concerning our councils addressing the issue of ageism in our society, and we'll try and bring that to Council in the next few weeks. I'm not sure whether it comes through as a notice of motion or through this part of the meeting, but that will come back to you. And if it's appropriate, if it's possible in the minutes so that the OPAC people know that I'm representing them, to note that their motion on addressing ageism will be tabled at a council meeting in the near future. The other thing that they've also asked me to bring up with you, through the, help me Mr Keenan on this, the disability and inclusion, have I got it right? Is it?
Through you, Mayor, diversity and inclusion.
Diversity and inclusion, I'm sorry, I haven't got my notes in front of me. Through that, they would like, as part of the review of that, to look at the establishment of a Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee that can work alongside the Older Persons Advisory Committee, Multi-Faith and so on. So I'd like the minutes to record that I've put on record that the Older Persons Advisory Committee is hoping that Council will address both of those issues. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, urgent business. Councillors, do you have any items of urgent business? Other than eating birthday cake for Tim Baxter. And confidential matters, councillors, we have no confidential items tonight. So there being no further business, I declare the meeting closed.